My name is Tom. As a surgeon at a general hospital, I spend my days extremely busy. The job of a surgeon is physically and mentally very demanding. My colleagues and junior doctors are always complaining about the busyness. Just yesterday, I was consulting with my good junior Alex. You know, this hospital is just too busy. I'm thinking about moving to another hospital, he said. What are you talking about? A general hospital is the best place to hone your skills, I replied. Despite everyone being exhausted, I was working hard for my wife, Sarah, and my soon-to-be 2-year-old son, Max. Max was angelically cute. When I get home, he greets me with his unsteady steps, calling out Daddy, and it soothes both my body and soul. But child-rearing was more challenging than I imagined. At times, since Sarah's burden with child-rearing inevitably became bigger, I took on as much housework as possible. I was not good at cooking, so I left that to Sarah, but I eagerly did what I could, like cleaning and laundry. Of course, whenever time allowed, I would play with Max or put him to bed, trying to give Sarah some time to rest. I would like to have a second child if possible, but due to the nature of being a doctor, my life schedule was irregular, and it was hard to find the right timing with Sarah, who was always tired. I had almost given up on bringing up the topic of a second child with Sarah. Even though it might be difficult right now, I have Max, who is more precious than anything, and I decided to wait patiently until Sarah gets into the pace of parenting. I fought so and was struggling with work and raising my son every day. As time went by, it seemed that Sarah was gradually regaining her strength. She seemed to be going out during the day, and her smile had increased. You seem to be in good spirits lately, I said. Do you think so? Maybe I'm finally getting the hang of it, Sarah laughed, and I was very happy to hear that. If things continue like this, Sarah might start thinking about a second child. I need to work harder for Sarah and Max. I thought about these things as I went through my days. But as she got better, Sarah started to neglect cooking. In the beginning, it was only occasional, but gradually it became more and more frequent to have takeaway or delivery. Sorry, I didn't have time today. Is takeaway hamburger okay? She said apologetically at first. Eventually, when I came home, she was asleep, and a store-bought hamburger was left alone in the dark room. I found out that Max was being left at daycare quite often. I thought Sarah needed a change of pace and didn't say anything at first, but she started to leave him there until quite late almost every day. I can't make it in time. Can you pick him up? She'd asked me more than once or twice. This must be going too far without outings. I was determined to have a serious talk with Sarah. One day, when I went to pick up Max from daycare as usual, a staff member approached me hesitantly and said, "Excuse me, can I have a moment?" "Yes," I replied. "It's about Max. Is he eating well at home?" "Excuse me, we think Max might have lost a bit of weight." Now, hearing that, I feel the same way. When we give out snacks here, he eats them so eagerly. It made us a little concerned. I see. Thank you for bringing up something so difficult. I'll check with my wife, I answered calmly, but I was filled with remorse towards Max. But more than that, intense anger was welling up inside me towards Sarah. Could it be that she hasn't been providing proper meals to Max? If that's the case, it's unforgivable, not just for me but for Max. I thought I'd give her a piece of my mind today. With that thought, I headed home. When I got home, Sarah wasn't back yet. There was instant food on the table, but I didn't touch it and ate a deli I bought on the way home. The deli is from a nearby place known for its delicious and nutritionally balanced meals. Max, is it good? Yum. Max was happily gobbling down the meat. Watching him made me feel guilty again. When I weighed Max during his bath, as expected, his weight had decreased. As I was dressing Max in his pajamas, trying desperately to hide my frustration, I heard a sound from the entrance. It was Sarah. "Welcome back." "I'm home. I need to talk to you about something now. I just want to sleep." I was irked by Sarah's selfishness. After all her fun, she plans to sleep without even checking on Max. Just right now. Perhaps sensing my anger, Sarah reluctantly followed me to the living room. The daycare staff mentioned today that Max might not be getting proper meals lately. My dinner has been nothing but instant foods too. Aren't you slacking off a bit too much? You're not giving Max properly nutritious food, are you? His weight has dropped. If there's a reason, just tell me straight. Sarah remained silent, looking down and tapping her toes, seemingly irritated. Her lack of remorse made me even angrier. I'm okay with having those meals, but you're Max's mother. What do you intend to do then? Sarah stood up abruptly and said, "Stop nagging. I'm doing my best. It's just that Max won't eat what I serve him." What? Enough already. I'm tired and going to sleep. Hey, wait a minute. Ignoring me, she disappeared into the bedroom. What on earth is going on with Sarah? I was left standing there, dumbfounded. Realizing that this couldn't continue, I started preparing meals for Max every day for his sake. Even when work kept me late, I made sure to prepare plenty of meals in advance so he could easily eat. However, even as I juggled work and household chores to the point of exhaustion, Sarah's attitude remained unchanged. Then, one day during my shift, an emergency surgery came up. I was waiting with my colleagues for the ambulance to arrive. The patient was a young woman who seemed to have been hit by a car while walking. When the ambulance arrived and the patient was brought out, I was at a loss for words. It was Sarah. Sarah. Tom, fortunately, Sarah was conscious. Seeing me, she seemed surprised too as she was carried on the stretcher. Sarah explained to me what had happened. I was coming back from dropping Max off at daycare and got hit by a car. Got it. We'll talk later. You don't need to speak now. Despite saying that, I couldn't help but feel a faint question arising in my mind. The accident site we just heard about was quite far from the daycare, wasn't it? Why was Sarah in such a place? But Sarah's treatment was a priority now. I shook my head vigorously, trying to dismiss the doubts. Sarah, you need surgery. The bleeding from your thigh is severe. Surgery? Yes. Can you take off your clothes? If it's too painful, we'll have to cut them off. Take off my clothes? No, no way. I know it might be embarrassing, but this is not the time for that. We can't proceed with the surgery like this. Then don't do it. Absolutely not. What's going on? If we don't do something, your life is in danger. I desperately tried to persuade Sarah, but she adamantly refused to take off her clothes. We couldn't get anywhere. We had to stop the bleeding somehow. I decided to have the anesthesiologist administer anesthesia and proceed with the surgery. Finally, once Sarah was unconscious, we began the preparations for the surgery. As we undressed her to change her into surgical attire, a nurse noticed a tattoo around her waist. Then she asked me, "Your wife has a tattoo?" No, I didn't know that. When did Sarah get a tattoo? Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be initials, but it wasn't my initials. As I was intently looking at the tattoo, I noticed one of the juniors retreating from the buzzing crowd. It was Alex, the one I had counseled before. What's going on? He looks pale as a ghost. Something was nagging at me, but this was not the time for that. I forced myself to look away from the tattoo and went back to preparing for the surgery. The surgery was successfully completed, and Sarah was hospitalized for a short while. Although I was relieved that the surgery was over, the thought of Sarah's tattoo haunted me, and a sense of unease clung to me. "Daddy," startled by Max's lonely voice, I snapped back to reality. I realized Max was looking at me with tears in his eyes. "Max, Mommy is okay, don't worry." Then, silently, Max clutched the hem of my shirt tightly. Right, Max has been feeling insecure all this time. I felt unbearable and hugged Max tightly. I must not let this continue. Holding Max in my arms, I resolved to clear up the doubts. I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate Sarah to clear the lump in my throat. Though I had my suspicions about Sarah, deep down, I hoped it was all a misunderstanding and nothing would come of it. But regrettably, the agency provided undeniable evidence of Sarah's infidelity within just a few days. As I thought, deep down, I knew I was just turning a blind eye to reality. And more shocking news was revealed. The cheating partner was one of my junior doctors. It was Alex, who had turned pale when the tattoo was found. It was all too clear upon reflection. The initials on her tattoo matched his. I thought he was a close junior, but he had been betraying me behind my back. I felt as if false strength was draining from my body and my own foolishness. But I couldn't just sit idly by. I have someone I need to protect. Max. I decided to get a divorce and started to organize my things. A few days later, Sarah came home from the hospital using crutches. What's this all about? Seeing the living room packed up as if we were about to move, Sarah let out a surprised gasp. She stood frozen at the entrance, seemingly not having expected this. But when she saw the divorce papers on the table, she murmured, "Ah, I see," and sat down quietly in a chair. "I know everything." I showed Sarah the report from the detective agency and said calmly, "So all the outings were for this reason. I can no longer trust you. Let's get a divorce. After all the betrayal, you can't possibly object, right?" Then, with a sigh mixed with a chuckle, Sarah said, "I won't say anything. Fine, let's get a divorce." Her casual tone irritated me. Despite being at fault, she had the nerve to act so defiant. I didn't want to talk anymore, but there was something I had to ask. Why? Why did you have an affair? Are you really in love with that guy? Yes, seriously. Actually, he was the one from the start. What do you mean? You really didn't notice? How, Maeve? Saying that, Sarah smirked maliciously. I've been with him long before we got married. What? I felt as if I had been struck hard on the back of my head. But he was just a resident with no money. Money? I married you for financial stability and continued seeing him. So you've both been deceiving me this whole time. Well, you could say that. My bad. Sarah said it lightly, not seeming to feel guilty at all. This is just too much. A mix of anger and sorrow made my head spin. Without paying any attention to how I felt, she continued, "But now he's a full-fledged doctor. I'm going to divorce you and marry him. It's good that we got caught." I glared at her, holding back tears. "You, what a person you are." "Thank you for everything," she said with a sneer, appearing as a stranger to me. I couldn't believe my entire marriage was a lie from the start. What a person. I didn't want to talk to her anymore. I felt like running away right then, but there was still something important to decide. Took a deep breath to maintain my composure and broached the most crucial topic. As for Max's custody, of course, I'll be taking him, I stated firmly, looking into Sarah's eyes. I thought she'd say she didn't want custody since she hadn't been taking care of him at all, but surprisingly she said, "Wait a minute. I won't give you Max." "What are you talking about? You've barely looked after him, always leaving him at daycare or with me. This is the line over here. You're always busy with work and you don't put your family first. You didn't praise Max." "I did." "What? What kind of logic is that? We're not getting anywhere. Does she not realize how much I've sacrificed for Max's upbringing, even losing sleep over it? After neglecting Max for so long, I can't believe she can say such things." She stubbornly continued to refuse, saying, "I won't give up Max." Seeing that we were getting nowhere, I decided to make a proposal to her. I wasn't too keen on it, but I had no choice. "Look, we're not going to resolve this between us. How about we let Max choose?" "Let Max choose?" "Yes. Shouldn't we respect his feelings?" "All right, fine." I was honestly very nervous about my own suggestion. Even though I had been the one taking care of him, I couldn't help but worry that he might still choose his mother in the end. Sarah's easy acceptance of my proposal suggested she was confident that Max would choose her. What if Max chooses Sarah? I shook my head vigorously, trying to dispel the negative thoughts. Then I brought Max from the other room where he had been watching TV. I kneeled down to be at eye level with Max and asked him, "Max, we need to talk about something difficult. Daddy and Mommy are going to live separately. Who do you want to live with?" I didn't expect my 2-year-old son to understand, but I looked into his eyes and asked him. As expected, Max seemed confused, looking back and forth between Sarah and me. He seemed unsure what to do and started waving his stuffed toy around. Maybe it's too harsh to make him choose. Just as I was about to give up and stand, he said, "Daddy," with tears in his eyes, and clung to my leg. "I want to be with Daddy. Don't leave me. I like Daddy." "Max." I hugged him tightly, feeling overwhelmed with joy. Sarah turned pale and stood up abruptly with a loud noise. "Max, why don't you want to come with Mommy?" She tried to coax Max with a soft voice, but he shook his head and said in a small voice, "I don't like Mommy. Mommy is always gone. Daddy plays with me. Daddy's food is yummy. I like Daddy. I don't like Mommy." Sarah was at a loss for words in response to Max's remarks. Max was earnestly expressing his feelings. "He's so small. Yet he sees everything clearly. Max's sincere words warmed my heart. It's okay. As long as I have Max, I'll be fine. So that settles it. I'll take custody. Fine, Sarah thought. Okay, I can just have another child with him. She tried to hide her frustration with a loud retort. I thought, serves you right, but that no longer mattered. Max and I are going to live our life together. Afterward, the divorce between Sarah and me was finalized without issue. The news of our divorce quickly spread among my colleagues, along with the reason being Sarah's affair and that the other man was Alex. Faced with everyone's disdain and being ostracized, Alex came to apologize to me later. Tom, I'm truly sorry. I know an apology doesn't fix what I did, but I truly regret the terrible thing I've done. I see Sarah and I have broken up. I'm leaving this hospital and will start over at a hospital in the countryside that I had been considering. All right, but I can't accept your apology, Tom. Of course, Sarah is to blame too. But you knew she was my wife and that we had a young child, and yet you continued your affair with her. I can never forgive you for that. I understand. I'm grateful for everything up to now. Not long after Alex moved to a regional hospital, I sometimes wondered how Sarah was doing now that her plans to marry him had fallen through. But it was none of my concern anymore. Then one day, something shocking happened. Sarah, abandoned by Alex, stormed into the hospital. Sarah. I saw her after such a long time. She looked disheveled, her hair a mess, and she appeared quite shabby. Sarah, what are you doing here? Where is he? Where is he? Sarah asked me in a frail voice. Up close, her skin was rough, and she looked extremely tired. Him? Oh, you mean him. Just go call him right now. Sarah screamed like a banshee, her hair flying wildly. The other doctors and patients looked on from a distance, pitying her, but I didn't feel sorry for her at all. You don't know? He left this hospital, moved to the countryside. What? What do you mean? Poor you, got dumped. Oh, seems like you don't even know where he went. Tough break. What? You know where he is? Tell me. Yes, I know, but do you think I'd tell you? Sarah glared at me, but I continued with a smile. Oh, and I've already spoken to your parents about the situation. They both cried and apologized to me. What? You talked to them? Of course. I had to explain the circumstances of the divorce. How could you? They were pretty angry with you, you know. Even if you begged them for help because you can't pay the child support, they probably wouldn't. As I said that, Sarah collapsed on the spot as if all strength had left her. She was crying, but naturally, I felt no inclination to reach out to her. Well, work hard on your own and make sure to pay all the child support. I won't let you escape until you've paid up every penny. Be prepared for that. With that, I left her behind. The responsibility I bear has grown heavier since the divorce, but thinking of Max gives me strength from deep within. Lately, my cooking has improved, and seeing Max eat happily fills me with joy. The happiest moment is when Max sees me, runs over with a big smile, and calls out, Daddy. All my fatigue vanishes in an instant. Even without a mother, I'll never let Max feel lonely. I'll devote everything to ensuring Max's happiness. Carrying the sleeping Max on the way back from daycare, I made this vow in my heart.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.